For our first story, we have 40 female and 45 male in a new relationship. I woke up to his girl best friend standing in his bedroom at 2 a.m. How do I navigate this? TLDR at the end, I, 40 female, am in a new relationship, and my BF, 45 male, did tell me that he and his GBF, girl best friend, female 40s, briefly dated a few years ago and slept together once, but realized they're better as friends. I felt a bit wary, but I'm also aware that I have friendships with men I have been with, and there's truly nothing there, for me, at least. I do believe him when he says it's totally platonic for him, though he has mentioned his most recent ex. They were together for 1.5+ years. Wasn't the GBF's biggest fan, but to each their own. GBF sounded cool and he mentioned we have a lot of things in common, she and I, and he could see us becoming good friends. Exes have requested some distance between GBF and BF as it made them uncomfortable, but I decided not to worry about it until I met her and judged for myself. The other night I was spending the night at my BF's when I woke up to a woman who had entered the apartment and came straight to his bedroom doorway and just fucking stared at us in his bed. When I first heard the sound of the door unlocking and a light click on, I was sleeping and thought it was part of a dream until I realized it was real. He was sleeping super soundly and I was trying to wake him up by patting his arm, rubbing his chest, touching his face, talking to him, and I was frantic. BC, I don't know who she was, how she got in, and why she was there at 2 a.m. She just stared for a few minutes and he was having a hard time waking up. By the time I finally was able to wake him up, she was gone. The only thing she said was, "Sorry for disturbing you." Understandably, it takes him a few minutes to get his bearings. I describe the woman. He states who it sounds like, then shows me a pic. It's GBF. He checked his calls and texts, and the last time she texted him was the day before. A few minutes later she was blowing up his phone and he finally answered, and she said something about being scared and needing to talk to him. He told her off and ended the call, but she continued to call and text for the next hour and was pissed that he wouldn't come out and talk with her. She has a BF, and she obviously knows about me. BF and I live about 1.5 hours apart, so I was there for about an hour after this happened. When I told him I was going home, I wanted to make sure I was okay to drive and I was just stunned and trying to process this, and I didn't know where she was and I was scared to run into her. He reached out to me the next day in the late morning and early afternoon, not sure if I wanted to talk to him or not. As it turns out, she let herself in, for the first time ever, having not called or texted first, to tell him she's in love with him and wanted him to choose her over me. He was shocked but laid his boundaries out, and she said that she can't be just friends with him, so their friendship is over. He's had a lot of loss in his life, and she was a big part of his support system over the last few years, so he's grieving the loss of the friendship. BC, this is fresh, and I don't know how to process any of this. He really does seem blindsided and never imagined she would do that. Yeah, I watch a lot of true crime. I'm the one who locked the door before we went to bed, so I know it was locked, but at first I thought maybe a neighbor entered the wrong apartment, and then while she stared for a few minutes while I was panicking and trying to wake me up, I was like, oh fuck, she might be a crazy ex and she might hurt us. I have never thought about what I'd do in this situation. BC, I never in a million years thought I'd be in it, but holy fuck kkkk. His apartment is keyless entry. She knew the access codes. BC, they were good friends for several years and he travels internationally for work a few weeks at a time and needed someone to water plants, grab mail. He's planning on connecting with apartment management to change both of the codes. I don't know what I think or need, but it's very clear that he doesn't understand how truly unhinged and traumatic this was for me. Validate me? Give me perspective? What the actual fuck? TLDR boyfriend's girl best friend let herself into his apartment at 2 a.m., scaring the shit out of me. BC, I didn't know who she was or why she was there. He says it's been platonic for 2 years, but she came to tell him she's in love with him. They briefly dated a few years ago. I know most people would break up immediately, but those were her actions and he never expected it. BC, she hasn't done that before. This is the first red flag I've seen from him. How do I process this and possibly move forward? Do I end it or do we pump the brakes? I'm aware that most people are the rule, not the exception, but I feel like he's being honest and I don't know if I'm being too trusting. Edit. Clarifications 1. Okay. The biggest glaring clarification is that I labeled her GBF. BC, it's easier to say than explain the whole thing. She is not among those few that he considers his best friends, but she was the closest female friend he had. 2. I think we are both still shocked that it happened. She was a safe friend for him up until that happened, and I'm sure it's a mindfuck to come to terms with how big of a deal it is. He took her at her word that they were just friends. 3. He plans on talking to his therapist and his friends, and I'm talking to mine too. He broke things off with her BC of incompatibilities. I don't know if he named them all to her, but for him, it has been absolutely only platonic since they decided to become just friends after. 4. X has asked for distance between them, is really that 118 relationship, or so. I don't have his previous relationships memorized BC their previous, but it sounds like that GF had a very small circle of friends BC she was difficult to get along with, and I think he just chalked it up to that GF's insecurities and put distance with GBF. Along those lines, I can see how he went there BC. Whenever I start a new employment opportunity it always feels like the coworkers, men and women, think we're in competition. I lay the groundwork with, hey, I'm not in competition with anyone here. We're a valuable team together BC, we all have our own approaches. There are some women that are hard to get along with and they know it, and I broke off a friendship a few months ago BC, she was like that. It happens. 5. Keyless entry is keyless. There's a pad at the front door to enter a number, and then another pad on his front door to enter another. They're friends. I have access to my friends' places. He travels internationally for work and has plans. I wasn't pressed. I trusted his trust in her, and she broke it. 6. I truly don't believe they're FWB. It's not his style, he's not interested in her, whatever. Maybe she was drunk and hyped up on Hallmark movies, I don't know, and it was still scary AF for me. Add. She was still wearing her coat, completely zipped up, and her shoes. If you're banging someone on the reg, you're not coming to the bedroom with a coat and shoes still on. 7. I don't think he's gotten to the point of realizing that she might have snuck in other times. I told him I feel violated and he should too. He's a science guy, so he's very methodical and rational, and I think he's so shocked and pissed by what she did, he literally doesn't know what to say. 8. He's changing the codes. I said that already, in the novel. That's the end of our first post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, the only red flag is from her. She's batshit crazy. I think he is doing everything right, and if you like him then give him a chance. Our second commenter says, if he is drawing boundaries with this girl, let him. It seems like she's being presumptuous on her own and he is drawing boundaries and cutting contact, which is all you can ask for and is ultimately best for everyone if feelings aren't there for him. Which of course they shouldn't be if he's with you. Our third commenter says, I'm sure the whole, I'll go to his place and confess that I love him right now. I don't care what time it is. Sounded sweet and romantic in her head, like it does in the movies. In reality it makes her sound like a psycho. Kudos to your boyfriend for laying out the boundaries and obviously seeing that this is not acceptable. But it has the possibility to turn very bad, very quickly. For our second story, we have Mike, 26 male, sister, 24 female, is letting a guy she barely knows physically discipline her daughter, 3F. How can I help? So basically my wife and I came back to my hometown for the weekend for what we were told was a late birthday party for my niece since the one scheduled on her actual birthday got stormed out by the hurricane. When we got to this 3-year-old's party, there were only 2 kids besides my niece, all the adults were drinking, and it seemed like the whole purpose of the party was for my sister to convince her loved ones that this guy who she hasn't even been with for 2 months but is already moved in with wasn't so bad when all he wanted to do was drink, watch the game, and brag about how he used to be in the army. Mind you, he left as an E4, if he even spoke to you at all. This is all happening after a falling out my sister had with my grandpa after she took said boyfriend over to his house to introduce them, and he made an ass of himself by walking in with a beer and trying to argue about politics. We walked in knowing about the falling out but trying to stay neutral and maybe get my sister's side of the story. She lied and said that she couldn't deal with my grandpa anymore because he said something racist along the lines of, "You collards all vote the same." There were other people present including my mom and my brother who confirmed that didn't happen. Going back to the birthday party, my wife and I were out in the backyard while he was grilling with my sister and my niece ran up to my sister crying. She was ready for cake and she didn't want to play anymore. I was playing cornhole on the side with my other relatives, but my wife saw this grown man walk up to my niece, yell at her to stop crying, and grab her hand and slap it. He looked back at my sister and said, she had her hand in her mouth again. My sister proceeded to tell my wife that it's hard being a mother figure and a father figure at the same, and it's nice to have him do that for her. Then the boyfriend started to bragging to my wife about how he has a house of discipline and that he's not shy to discipline my niece or his 2 daughters, who are close in age, in private or in front of people. My sister just agreed and also started making excuses for this guy, including saying he has to drink because of his anxiety and that's why he showed up at my grandpa's drunk. At this point you may be wondering, what about the dad? He is a grown man in his mid-20s who lives with his parents who want custody of my niece. After hearing that my sister gave permission to a random guy to hit her 3-year-old daughter, I think it would be best. Would it be better to tell the father what's going on or try to get through to my sister about her behavior? That's the end of our second post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, you absolutely need to tell the father. And be ready for your wife or other family members to act as witnesses in their custody battle. This is 100% not okay. Our second commenter says, tell the father, quickly before the BF hurts the little girl. Your sister is an idiot who does not deserve a child and shouldn't be allowed to have any children near her. Our third commenter says, tell the father and report it to CPS. There was a 2-year-old boy that was beaten to death by the mother's boyfriend in my local area and it was heartbreaking. Protect that innocent child. Any potential fallout is worth the life of that child. If he does that in public, I greatly worry what happens behind closed doors. For our last story, we have my husband, 40 male, and I, 40 female, are at odds over our dog who recently bit our son. How do I help him see my side? Our dog is older, 13, and is deaf, losing eyesight and generally being more grumpy as she ages, but otherwise is in good health. Recently she barks all the time at seemingly nothing, and snarls when you brush up against her tail. She's previously only had one instance of showing aggression, and that was with a groomer, where she tried to bite the blow dryer. Now last week she bit our 5-year-old's finger. I wasn't in the room so couldn't see what happened, but he's autistic and has always been very gentle with our dogs, so I can't imagine he did anything to knowingly instigate, but getting his side of the story is a struggle. The bite was small, but it broke the skin and upset him, and me, quite a bit, understandably. Since then I've noticed she is less tolerant of our kids, barking and growling at them with her hair raised when they are playing in the same room but not near her. I won't leave them alone together now, and if I have to leave the room I put our dog away in our bedroom. Obviously this isn't ideal, and not a great quality of life being locked away frequently. I spoke to my retired parents about this and they offered to have her go live with them. They love her too and couldn't stand to see us rehome her with anyone else. My husband is very much opposed to this. He thinks she's fine and nothing needs to change. He gives nothing but excuses for her actions, with no suggestions on what we should do. When I bring it up, he gets very defensive, telling me to go ahead and put her down if that's what you want. It isn't, and I have also never suggested this. I am trying to come to some mutual understanding, but we appear to be at a stalemate. I feel very frustrated. Does anyone have suggestions on how to either move past this, or how to approach the topic again with my husband? TLDR. Our elder dog bit our son. I want to rehome her with my parents but husband is refusing. Feel stuck and don't know how to move past it. That's the end of our last post. Let's see what the commenters had to say. Our first commenter says, has she been to the vet? It's likely that she's in pain, whether due to arthritis or something else, and needs help. Going to your parents seems best, but please make sure she sees a doctor as well. Our second commenter says, your dog is already deaf and is now losing her eyesight. She is scared. Active kids all around her probably is very scary to her. I think you need to frame the discussion as what is best for the dog to your husband. Your dog is not happy in the current environment. She will probably be much more content in the quiet environment your parents can provide. She is just going into senior assisted living. Our third commenter says, I did rescue, foster and rehabilitation for dogs for over 22 years. Many senior citizens stayed their last days with me. Several developed dementia-like symptoms. The kindest thing you can do for your girl is making sure her last months and days are not spending stressed out, anxious and upset. I know your husband is upset with the idea she needs rehome, but it's for her well-being and the children's safety. Taking her to live with people who love her and she is familiar with them is going to settle her into peacefulness. She may still be agitated but not on guard all the time because of the children. But you also need to make sure your parents are willing to make the tough calls when it's time to let her go. A lot of older folks just wait for too long and have a hard time letting go. I think their impending end of life is part of it. No judgment, but it's what I've seen over the years. Your husband is hurting with this choice and trying to distance himself from the choice of rehoming to protect his heart, but he's got to be a dad in this situation and think of not just his human children but his fur child too. She needs a less stressed environment. It's better for her cognitive senses, her emotional state and her physical well-being. I'm sorry you've got to experience this. It's really hard to go through. That's all for today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.